Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and it's Throwback Thursday. Yeah! All right, so I was plugging away at the next one when I hit on something that inspired me to get in the Wayback Machine and do an old school Baltimore Fats video. Timer and all, right? So have fun with this one, guys. All right, I'm trying to pull a reference for this new video I'm working on, right? And I type in fake history into Googly. See what the oracle here, the gatekeepers, will tell me about fake history. And it gives me pseudo history. So those out there proposing that our history is faked in some way or, manipulated, staged into being, they're now called, it's now called pseudo history, which is, I think, a step up. Because right before it was just crazy conspiracy theory, right? At least pseudo history makes it seem like, well, pseudo is close to history. Right? Pseudo is close to something, right? Pseudo history must be close to history. It's close. It's maybe history adjacent. I don't know. So let's take a look. All right, so here we go with some pseudo history. Let's see what they have to say about it here. Oh, I didn't get my timer going. It is just like the old days. All right, here we go. My 30-minute timer. All right, so pseudo history. We got here. Sonder Action 1005. Nazi project with the explicit goal of hiding or destroying any evidence. Of course, they put this right at the top of pseudo history. You come here, you're immediately denying this thing, right? You must be if you're looking at pseudo history. Good Lord, right off the bat. And then we have the lost cause of the Confederacy, negationist. Ooh, I like the name negation, the word negationist. History negationism. Am I even saying that right? Historical negationism, also called historical denialism, is falsification or distortion of the historical record. This is distinct from historical revisionism, a broader term encompassing academic reinterpretations of history driven by new evidence or reasoning. All right. Historical negation. We negate history. Okay. How do you negate history? What is this? The Igor Genocide Memorial and Museum in Turkey promotes the false narrative that Armenians committed genocide against the Turks, rather than vice versa. I didn't even know that was a thing. All right. Pseudo-history is a form of pseudo-scholarship. I like it. You can be a pseudo-scholar. Yeah, how does that? Pseudo-scholarship is a term used to describe work, examples of publication or lectures, or a body of work that is presented as, but is not, a product of rigorous and objective study or research. Kind of like Mud City. The act of producing such work, or the pretended learning upon which it, or the pretended learning upon which it is based. Examples of pseudoscience. This is what we're talking about here. Pseudo everything. What is the definition of pseudo? I didn't spell that right. No, of course. Yes, I meant pseudo. Pseudo is a prefix that generally means false, fake, or pretended. It indicates something that appears to be real, but is not. All right, hold on. We're gonna do that again. All right, so pseudo is a prefix that generally means false, fake, or pretended. It indicates something that appears to be real but is not, or that is a deceptive imitation. It can be used with nouns and adjectives to describe things that are not genuine. All right. Yep, pseudo. All right, none of this is genuine. It's all fake. Pseudo-philosophy. I mean, pseudo-philosophy? Philosophy is just a bunch of made-up shit. Pseudo-philosophy is a philosophical idea or system which does not meet an expected set of philosophical standards. There is no universally accepted set of standards, but there are similarities and some common ground. Why don't you see? You should have a link to philosophical idea there, you bastards, and make me work to. Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm not doing it. It's not worth it. I'm wasting my time. Ooh, chaos magic with pseudo scholarship and conspiracy theory, of course. Chaos magic. There it is. 8 points in the star. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's an 8-pointed star right there. Do you believe in magic? Chaos magic is a modern tradition of magic emerging in England in the 1970s. As a part of a wider neo-pagan and esoteric subculture. It drew heavily from the occult beliefs of artist Austin Osman Spare. Expressed several decades earlier. It has been characterized as an invented religion, with some commentators drawing similarities between the movement and Discordianism. Magical organizations within this tradition include the Illuminates of Thanateros and the Temple of Psychic Youth. Psychic? See? Psychic Youth? Alright, see? I just rabbit hole this shit for hours. Where was I? Pseudo-philosophy. Oh. Counter knowledge. Predatory journal. Think about what you're trying to do to me. Think. Predatory publishing. Also write-only publishing or deceptive publishing is an exploitive academic publishing business model where the journal or publisher prioritizes self-interest at the expense of scholarship. That's what publication bias does. I mean, shit. They act like Wikipedia presents it. The gatekeepers present it as if, mainstream, quote-unquote, legitimate scholars don't use the same techniques as the pseudo people. Because they do. All right, back to pseudo history here. All right, here we go. Although pseudo history comes in many forms, scholars have identified common features in pseudo historical works. Pseudo history is almost always motivated by a contemporary political, religious, or personal agenda. Yeah, but so is legit science and history. It frequently presents sensational claims or a big lie about historical facts, which would require unwarranted revision of the historical record. Now, was it Norm Macdonald? I think it was Norm Macdonald who said something like, it's amazing that, all the winners in history were the good guys, right? It's a perfect track record. Something like that. Sorry, Norm, rest in peace. I butchered that joke. But it was something like that, right? How the winners, it's 100% win streak for the good guys, right? And it's the same, in wars, but also in how history is presented, right? Another hallmark is an underlying premise that powerful groups have a furtive agenda to suppress the promoter's thesis, a premise commonly corroborated by elaborate conspiracy theories. All right, see, this thing elaborate. I love that with conspiracy theories, right? Because the crazier, the more far out you can go, and I don't have a picture of the puzzle tree up and ready to go, but the more elaborate you can make it, the harder it becomes to sort of disprove, right? And that's kind of how history works, the presented history model. That's kind of how it works. They have it so backed up and sourced up with, as I'm going to get into in the next episode, with the museums and scholarship and, and all of that, right? So quagmired up in all of that, that it almost becomes impossible to distinguish the difference between what they're calling pseudo history here and history as it's presented in the mainstream narrative. All right, works of pseudo history often point exclusively to unreliable sources, including myths and legends, and is often treated as literal historical truth to support the thesis being promoted while ignoring valid Ignoring valid sources that contradict it has its link. Special pleading! What? Special pleading is an informal fallacy wherein a person claims an exception to a general or universal principle, but the exception is unjustified. It applies a double standard. In the classic distinction among material fallacies, cognitive fallacies and formal fallacy. Hold on, I need to do that. I'm sorry. I'm getting too excited here. I gotta slow down. All right. In the classic distinction among material fallacies, all right, so define material fallacy for me. Fallacies are generally classified strictly by either their structure or their content, such as by classifying them as formal fallacies or informal fallacies, respectively. The classification of informal fallacies may be subdivided into categories such as linguistics, relevance through omission, relevance through intrusion, and relevance through presumption. Alternatively, fallacies may be classified by the process by which they occur, such as material fallacies, content, verbal fallacies, linguistic, and formal fallacies, error in inference. In turn, material fallacies may be placed into the more general category of informal fallacies. All right, so now, a list of cognitive biases, right? I mean, but to me, this is something we all suffer from. Cognitive biases are symptomatic patterns of deviation from norm and or rational. Wait a minute. Cognitive biases are systematic patterns of deviation from norm and or rationality in judgment. They are often studied in psychology, sociology, and behavioral economics. Although the reality of most of these biases is confirmed by reproducible research, there are some controversies about how to classify these biases or how to explain them. Several theoretical causes are known for some cognitive biases, which provides a classification of biases by their common general mechanism, such as noisy information processing. All right, but here, I love this. Theoretical causes are known for some. How can something that's theoretical be known, right? I mean, am I off base here in equating what's known as truth or a definable truth or something? I don't know. Theoretical causes. Common theoretical causes of some cognitive biases. Bounded rationality, limits of optimization and rationality. All right, prospect theory. Evolutionary psychology, remnants from evolutionary adaptive mental function. Cognitive dissonance, right? Dissonance. This is what so many, if not all of us, suffer from in some shape. Impression management. I mean, this is what I talk about in Mud City in terms of like seeing, being, believing, right? You know, the brain is so like a sponge. It wants to trust the things that it sees. All right, so depending on how you present something is really going to play a big factor in how the brain understands that perception, you know, whether it wants to call it truth or a lie or whatever, right? You know, explanations include information. Let's see. No, we want to go back, right? Back to pseudo history. Oh, wait a minute. I see. As I was looking, my eyes caught lip service. What? Because it would seem special pleading most likely falls within the category of cognitive fallacy because it would seem to relate lip service. That's right. We got here through through special pleading. Please believe my crazy false conspiracy theory. Shit. Okay. Oh, here we go. More sources, right? Okay, wait a minute. I lost myself. All right, pseudo history is almost right because we were here, right? Oh no, I'm gonna leave all of this in, right? Because my failing eyes have made me go lost here. All right, so we're just gonna jump ahead to notable examples of pseudo history. Right, includes British Israelism. not to be confused with Israelis in the United Kingdom, British Jews, or Christian Zionism in the United Kingdom. Israel in Britain. A brief statement of the evidence is in proof of the Israelitish origin of the British race. All right, see, now this is kind of interesting to me because I think it was when I was actively looking at the Poe stuff, there was a theory that was presented in there that the British people had a Semitic origin. I don't think they called it Israeli. It was so long ago now, but that was something that was on the horizon in the Poe stuff, looking at how how Ireland was founded and stuff. All right, Israel and Britain. See, I want to read this. See this. I want to read this book. I might have to. This is why it takes me forever to make videos these days, guys. Not only, I just don't have the ability that I used to have. All right, British Israelism is a pseudo-historical belief that the people of Great Britain are genetically, racially, and linguistically the direct descendants of the 10 lost tribes of ancient Israel, with roots in the 16th century. Okay. All right. Archaeological, ethnological, genetic, and linguistic research has refuted this concept that it's Israelis it's one of the lost 10 tribes of Israel that founded or first populated Britain. The thing about this is that it has refuted this by promoting its own agenda, what it wants. I mean, it is supporting its own. These things are just supporting their own bias. I mean, that's the rub. Right, what's next? The lost cause of the Confederacy. Okay. Custis Lee rides on horseback in front of Jefferson Davis Memorial, 1907. It's a fascist memorial like they have here in Baltimore, as most war memorials are, I believe. Fascists. The lost cause of the Confederacy, known simply as the Lost Cause, is an American pseudo-historical and historical negationist myth that argues that the cause of the Confederate States during the American Civil War was just, heroic, and not centered on slavery. First articulated in 1866. Interesting year, 1866. As in terms of what I've been looking at for my next video, which won't be the McHenry Mecha Tour crawl after all. Bowen didn't know it. It has continued to influence racism, gender roles, and religious attitudes in the southern United States all right. The Irish slaves myth. And what do we got here for Irish slaves, right? Because that's one of the... That is hilarious. The Irish slave myth is a fringe pseudo-historical narrative that conflates the penal transportation and indentured servitude of Irish people during the 17th and 18th centuries with the hereditary chattel slavery experienced by the forebears of African diaspora. Some white nationalists, and others who want to minimize the effects of hereditary chattel slavery on Africans and their descendants have used this false equivalence to deny racism against African Americans or claim that African Americans are too vocal in seeking justice for historical grievances. Okay, and again, this is tough. One of the things, sneak peek here, spoiler alert, maybe. In the video I'm working on, I've said that, for Mud City, the whole point of Mud City is to look at all of these events as if they're fake and try to confirm that bias using the gatekeepers like Wikipedia, Googly, and so forth, right? So, both parties kind of hold equal footing in Mud City, so to speak, which is kind of interesting dichotomy, I guess, between, the way this shit is presented and how I'm looking at it for my false paradigm of Mud City. This myth has been in circulation since at least the 1900s. All right, I don't know how much time do I want to go into this. How much time do I have left? Ooh, I'm closing in on my 30-minute timer here. Got less than 10 minutes to go. What was after the Irish slaves myth? Witch cult. The witch cult. More witches! Ooh! Look at this! Look at this guy. See, to make him bigger, can I make... I'm going to pause this here and make a photo I can zoom around in, guys. Hold on. Okay, here he comes, right? Goat man! Look at this guy. Oh my god. I like how his antlers are in the shape of a leer. That's kind of cool. He's got, what? Leaves? Some sort of laurel? Yeah, because this, Baphomet goat beast rests on his laurels. All right, we got a bunch of, what's going on with this person back there? We got people hanging. They're hanging and unimpaled. Evil stuff happening here. We got, now is this a skeleton, or is this somebody painted to look like a skeleton in a painting? I don't know. This is a crazy picture. What do they call this on the web? Francisco de Goya's Witches' Sabbath, 1789. All right, so we're back with this, and so the witch cult hypothesis. It's a discredited theory that the witch trials of the early modern period were an attempt to suppress a pagan religion that had survived the Christianization of Europe. According to its proponents, accused witches were actually followers of this alleged religion. And they argue that the witch cult revolved around worshiping a horned god of fertility and the underworld, whom Christian prosecutors identified with the devil, and whose followers held nocturnal rites at the witches' Sabbath. All right, of course. Who has dismissed this? Who has discredited this theory? But the winners, right? The winners of the Inquisition and so forth. All right, they get to discredit this theory that it wasn't a religion and that they were evil witches worshiping the devil to gain favor of some sort or other. What's next? The Armenian genocide denial. See, I don't know a lot about this. Armenian genocide denial is a negationist's claim that the Ottoman Empire and its ruling party, the Committee of Union and Progress, of course that's what the ruling party was called, right, did not commit genocide against the Armenian citizens, right? But didn't they? During World War I, a crime documented in a large body of evidence and affirmed by a vast majority of scholars. All right, so this theory is claiming that the Armenians in the Ottoman Empire were resettled for military reasons, not exterminated. In its aftermath, incriminating documents were systematically destroyed. Denial has been the policy of every government of the Ottoman Empire's successor state, the Republic of Turkey, as of... You gotta deny these things, right? Because Holocaust denial is next. Clean. This sounds like more of the same, actually. But what is this? Clean Wehrmacht. Wehrmacht? Gesundheit. Germans protesting the Wehrmacht exhibition in 2002. Whoa! All right, I'm going to go a couple more minutes here. We'll write out what this is because I did get tripped up a few times. There will have to be a little bit of editing for this one. The Katyn massacre. Katyn. Looks like a lot of dead people. It's a mass grave of Polish officers. So again, like the last three on the pseudo-history, examples of, right? The last 3 or 4, right? Were all about genocidal denial, all right? And no, we weren't killing people en masse. And again, were they not gonna deny it, It's interesting. And again, when you approach the idea of genocide through the prism, the filter that these events were faked and staged to determine a public outcome, they become very interesting, just from a speculative standpoint. Again, and this is one of the things that I say, I don't know if I said it already in here today, is that while making Mud City and using it to approach our historical narrative that way through the idea that it's all been faked or staged somehow, you know, but everything has been, right? And so there is no excusing anything from everything, right? I don't get to choose which historical events I look at through this prism. I'm looking at all of them through this prism. And that's what makes the story so fun, right? And so I guess I'm going to wrap this one up here. This was a crazy amount of fun for me to sort of go back to the beginning of, how my show really started, which was just sharing the rabbit holing I was doing with you guys, and I certainly really have enjoyed the development of the show and the series, and, and how, I'm going to have to call you back. I'm going to have to call you back in like 2 seconds. All right, bye. There's always a little bit of life interruptus going on, right? So to conclude, I really enjoy, going back. And so to conclude, going back and looking at some of those older episodes, I'm mortified by it, but this was a whole lot of fun, and maybe I'll continue to try to do more of this down the line as I continue to build my, more scripted, worked out, fleshed out presentations. Well, anyway, all right, enough of my yammering, right? So remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies, right? So until the next one, cheers.